So I get the question once in a while about where does it say in the Bible that we are supposed to consistently tithe. So this is a good place that I found is Sirach 35. And the whole book is good. It really talks about the heart that you want to have. So let's get into it. He that keepeth the law bringeth offerings enough. He that taketh heed to the commandment offereth a peace offering. He that requireth a good turn offereth fine flour, and he that giveth alms sacrifice praise. To depart from wickedness is a thing pleasing to the Lord, and to forsake unrighteousness is propitiation. Thou shalt not appear empty before the Lord, for all these things are to be done because of the commandment. The offering of the righteousness maketh the altar fat, and the sweet savor thereof is before the Most High. So you can read all of it and just check your heart, see what you think. You know, my job as a minister is not to really tell you what to do or to interpret, you know, how God talks to you. You know, this is an inner game. I just want to tell you what has worked for me and what has provided, you know, the kingdom and the provision, bountiful provision. So let's see what else we have here. Give unto the Most High according as he hath enriched thee, and as thou hast gotten, give with a cheerful eye. See, in all thy gifts show a cheerful countenance, and dedicate thy tithes with gladness. Well, it says tithes, dedicate the tithes. So what I've discovered is that whether you need to do this or not, I really can't say. You know, I know that I've tried going without tithing, and my prosperity scattered. I couldn't hold on to the consciousness that provided, you know, the rich, bountiful substance of spirit that always demonstrates enough to give and to share and to always have more. You see, that consciousness brings peace, and I've never found another way to do it. I've tried to stop tithing because I thought that I would test it out, and that's when I ended up going through my second bankruptcy. And when I started tithing, everything turned right side up again. You see, so God speaks to us. And for me, I can only tell you what I know from experience. So if we go to Luke, all right, not that one. Right here, 18:12. I fast twice a week and give tithes of all that I possess. So that to me is really powerful. And you know what's really neat about that is one of the things I'm working on is we have this material consciousness that comes from the world. It's the carnal mind. And the carnal mind always wants to hoard material stuff. Calories, body fat, cars, homes, possessions, money, relationships. It values everything as worldly. It stores treasures in the world. Okay? Now, I notice that when I start fasting, and I start doing like intermittent fasting, and I eat no more than 2 meals a day, and I really start to dial that in, things really get clear in my consciousness. I have a real clear connection to what you would call the divine source of ideas and inspiration. And now he says he also gives tithes of all that he possesses. I've done many, many talks on tithing. I've talked about how sacrifice is necessary in the natural so that you can reap in the supernatural, which is the imagination of spirit, so that you can sow in the winter and reap in the summer seasons. You know, I've been on this journey for about 18 to 20 years. And I can tell you I've done it both ways. I've done it with tithing and without tithing. And because I have fear of the Lord, okay, which means that I'm not going to turn away from that commandment, I love to tithe. I love to know that I'm not in control. Because when I was in control, things didn't go so well. How can the little mortal self take the reins and take the wheel and be in control when it can't even control its own waistline? It can't even control its own marriage. It can't even control its own... See, it can't control anything. It's such a puny little disgrace to think that the reasoning mind is anything of itself. It's nothing. And so every idea that wants to take, the initiative to do it without complete surrender to divinity, right? What is that? It's arrogance. And so we check ourselves for arrogance. And giving a tithe is a sign of humility, the opposite of arrogance. And humility brings favor because it sows honor. And wherever you sow honor, you reap favor. And when you do it with a cheerful heart, it's all about the heart. When you give with a cheerful heart, you prosper. When you give begrudgingly because you think it's some Old Testament law and you really don't want to participate with it, well, you haven't given anything at all. Because God don't need your money. And that's a fact. And all of the people that don't agree with tithing all say the same thing. Well, God don't need your money, so why should we tithe? That's just a cop-out. That's the reasoning mind trying to commit adultery by becoming of the ideas of this world. And maybe you don't understand what I just said, because maybe you haven't looked at the scripture from that perspective. But what I want to do to simplify this to you is that, say, when you honor God, you receive blessings, favor. You get exalted in the midst of your peers. I know because I've done it. I don't understand all of the ways God has to do it because it's always a mystery, and I'm okay with that because the reasoning mind is the only part of me that thinks it needs to know how everything is going to work out, and I want to move as far away from that as possible because that is the cause of sin, suffering, poverty. It's called arrogance. So you check yourself before you wreck yourself. You see, if you think you're in control, you as the mortal, you've gone off into the wilderness. And while you may prosper for a season, you have no root, you have no foundation. You can say you love God, and you can say you honor God, and you can say that you don't have to sacrifice anything in the natural because it's all yours. You earned it. Why should you give it up? I mean, come on, you've done everything right so far. But what I know to be true is that you of yourself have done nothing. That's arrogance. What have you done? Do you know that if it weren't for your next breath, which is given to you by God, even your breath is given to you by God. So what have you of yourself ever accomplished aside from God's grace? Absolutely nothing. Because you are nothing. Because God is everything. God is all. And so when we sow the tenth, the tithe, when we sacrifice what we have gathered in our hands as the false god of this world, wealth, the goddess of wealth, and we pursue the goddess of wisdom instead, the goddess of wealth gets jealous and chases us. Now, I'll leave you with a couple things. And again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. You do whatever you want to do. I'm not here to convince you of anything, except I want to get you to look at it from another perspective and just see what the Spirit in you has to say about it. You have to tune into that. When man thinks he is giving, he is receiving. Manifest creation is man. It's the expression of the verb activity of the fruits of the Spirit, and love is the activity of a true tithe. It's the act of love and faith and gratitude all wrapped up into one thing. It's called gratitude. And by the way, Khalif, I just remembered, because see, what blesses one blesses all. I just remembered what you were looking for. You reached out saying you wanted to know something, and it had to do with gratitude. Gratitude was the sum total of all of the fruits of the Spirit combined, and the expression of gratitude was the secret, period. That's what you were looking for. That just came to me right now. But you see why it came to me? I'll give you an example. I decided to make this video so that I could share some of the knowledge that I have ascertained through experience with you. Now, because I decided to give from that rich heart of wisdom that has been acquired through the trenches of what you'd call material life, I want to give you a shortcut, right, to victory. What happened was an immediate longing of mine showed up. Someone asked me a question, I didn't have a clue. Sometimes I don't realize what I say in every video I make so many of them. But you see, I didn't have to even think about it. And that's how your life is supposed to go. When you're in the flow of doing the next thing that is right. Now get this. I want you to write this down. What is the next right thing I can do in this moment? Now that is the subsidiary of what is the fastest path to my joy in this moment. This is the ancillary, part that you have to take into consideration if you want to make sure that your joy is actually in alignment with good, is what is the next right thing that I can do in this moment. Now, if you really want to prosper, put those two together. So, I'll give you an example. What is the fastest path to my joy in this moment? Well, it was to make this video. And what is the next right thing that I can do in this moment? To give you just all perspectives of what I've discovered and let you do your own thing. I don't really have any say over what you choose to do. The only thing that comes out of my heart is love, and I want you to prosper. My mission is to give shortcuts where I've discovered them by discovering wisdom and then leaning on it and realizing that it does work and you can trust your life to God. And if that works for you, then I've done my job, because you'll discover it yourself. And if it doesn't work for you and you found a better way, well, then maybe you should teach that way, and maybe other people should put it to the test. And if it works, well, then you've done good works. But a lot of people don't care to teach what they know. They don't care to actually proclaim anything other than their opinion. See, an opinion is different than a truth. An opinion is something that you choose to believe because your reasoning mind finds its own justification for its existence within that opinion. An opinion means no ground to stand on, no fact. If you look at the Parse syntax grammar, opinion means no fact. Okay? It has no fact. So what is a no fact? It's here today and gone tomorrow. It's nothing. Now, the opinion that you can store any wealth in this world, when first of all it's 99.9997% empty space, if you look down to the subatomic particles, etc., there's nothing there. Do you know that you could take 3 human beings, take the empty space out of them, and they would fit on the edge of a pin? The matter would fit on the head of a pin? Do you know that the entire world, if you took the empty space out, would be the size of a softball? Now, when you look at the world through your human eyes, it doesn't look that way, does it? And where do you gather most of your reasoning? From that perspective. And what is that perspective? It's called ignorance of the Father. The Father is not mortal. The Father has nothing to do with material, carnal, flesh reality. So if you've taken in all of your data from those minds of mortality, and you've forgotten the verb body of God, the expression of the fruits of the Spirit, then all you have to do to correct that is say, well, if I get in alignment with the verb activity, the expression of the fruits of the Spirit, which in this case, what is fasting twice a week and giving tithes? It is the expression of absolute gratitude. Knowing, see, that all is contained within the substance of spiritual divinity. I live, move, and have my being in Him. And if that's the case, then what is the fulcrum of power that I possess? My free will. And when I use my free will to turn back to the Father so that I can be in alignment with the Father. Do you see, Khalif? Do you see? I don't have to think anymore. I know. Because the Father knows. The Father never created a reasoning mortal. I have seen the most heinous forms of wickedness on this planet that have come from what you would call highly intelligent human beings. Now, I'm not telling you that you should look at JOHNMCAFEE, the afterlife account, on Telegram, and by all means, one view should be enough, because it's the most horrendous thing I've ever seen in my life. Someone shared it with me, and I have seen some of these very elitist types doing some very, very awful, horrendous things. And these are very intellectually left-brained, reasoning, believing they've gotten away with something type of individuals. But I'm here to tell you that if you want provision, protection, and promotion from the Most High, you really should look at my book, Trust, and read the chapter on tithing. I really believe it was the best explanation that I could possibly give. And in that chapter, I talked about if you're relying on the reasoning mind, the principalities and rulers in the places of power and darkness on this planet, they've had thousands of years to perfect their craft. And if you believe you're going to beat them at their game, I believe you're severely mistaken. I believe that your only covenant protection that you have is to take the path that the ancients knew about. And I'm talking about what I've read to you right now with Sirach. I've read to you right now in Luke and Malachi 3, verse 10 through 12. And I wholeheartedly believe in my soul it does not just have to do with transferring energy from the left brain to the right brain, because that is still just dealing with inner kingdom type stuff. All right? The ancient Gnostic Gospels talked about the outer realms of winter. They talked about sowing in the winter to reap in the summer. The mechanics in the Eastern Vedic knowledge libraries, if you will, they talk about how karma is action, cellular memory, and reaction. You see, what you do sow is what you reap, and to the measure and proportion of what you sow. And I believe in my heart that if you give your heart to God through the act of tithing, knowing that you of yourself are not A, responsible for your own protection, B, are not responsible for your own provision, and C, you were never engineered to take thought for your life. What I know to be true is that you will open up the intuitive faculty of what you call the flow state, the right brain, etc. But it doesn't come by just thinking about it. You have to understand that how you operate in the natural does matter. Literally, matter. That's where it is. And what happens in the supernatural, well, what have you sown into the winter season? Because that's what you will expect. The force of expectation will come in the summer season. What you call the intuitive, imagination, spiritual. You see, your harvest comes as spiritual, rich, divine idea. Now, had I not done this so long in my life, I wouldn't be here sharing with you what I know. But what I believe to be true is that God will never, ever fail to reward a cheerful, gratitude, giving heart that gives up the false in full pursuit and radical reliance of the true. And the tithe is the only thing that I know that systematically allows you to take all of your reasoning, because it took all of your reasoning to gather all of the treasures in your hand now, didn't it? So how do you think you're going to let go of that reasoning if you don't gather that treasure and let go of what you have compositely put together through that reasoning? If you don't sacrifice that false god, then what have you actually done? Because the hearts of men are always known to God. Just nuggets to think about. But by all means, I am not trying to tell you how to live. You must figure that out for yourself. But I do believe that the answers are staring at you right in the face if you're just open enough to receive them.